And I think you've seen other sorts of worship spaces. Worship spaces have grown and have tried to be very, very different looking than traditional church. This was deliberately in the round. It's the same place, different angle. This was Mars Hill Church. Some of you know the pastor there is kind of controversial. Mark Driscoll, very controversial. But what they've done is they've had a number of different satellite churches, and they find kind of hip places downtown Seattle, kind of hip place, and they transform it and make it into a church. Or, you look at that. What I love is this juxtaposition between that and these pews. It's a very different kind of feeling, but again, a feeling that many people find extremely inviting. Or if we go with, some of you are familiar with Joel Osteen. Here, let's just go to the next picture. You can see his head there. I mean, on the big screen, you can see how incredible that is. I want to mention one quick thing, and this is a caveat to everything I've said so far. I do think, in terms of changes, I think these are the most significant changes that we've seen in the life of the church. Within the last 5 years, there's been some whiplash. And we see that with the Catholic Church coming out with a more traditional liturgy in November. We see that, what about the next 50 years? Increasingly, people say, yeah, this seems really familiar, and it feels right, and it's exciting, but transcendence and awe sometimes is missing. And it's a question for people who have these kinds of worships. How do you make sure that happens? Or a hunger for rootedness that grows out of the ancient and modern. I don't know, you don't always want your parents, for instance, to be your best friends. You want them to be mentors, you want them to be guides. And there's sometimes a hunger for rootedness, and you recognize when you see wisdom and experience wisdom. A desire for integrity and authenticity. Susan and I had a student, he double majored in German and religious studies, he's now a missionary in Berlin. He was back a few weeks ago talking about a church in Berlin that really is growing. And he said it's a church that has lots of designers going to it, people who are engaged in design, but it's not slick at all. It's very, in part because they can see through that. They just want authenticity. And a recognition of the importance of involvement over passivity, of participating rather than being observers or an audience. So those are the sorts of changes that I think we're going to be seeing in the next 50 years. How can we be more conscious, not of these various elements we've discussed, but of these sort of attributes and values that are really important to people. So, thank you very much.
Who would want a question? That was brilliant.